What's up, guys? Today was day 2 of training camp. I was at training camp today, and here to discuss training camp day 2, I am joined by none other than Bay Area Baller 18. How you
Amin the
doing today?
dream.
How you doing today, Baller? Football is back. The second day of football, second day of training camp. I'm excited. How are you feeling tonight?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me, Amin. And I'm pumped up. It's just a wonderful time of the year. Football is upon us, right? We just ironed out a couple of my fantasy football draft dates coming up. It's just an exciting time of the year. Uh, I'm pumped up.
Yep. So am I. And I mean, first preseason game is only 2 weeks away. So feeling great. I mean, obviously first football game is Hall of Fame game for August 4th, so that's next week. But we got Niners football on the 12th. So I mean, I'm excited for that. So without a further ado, let's jump right into the topic, starting off with Trey Lance. Now, I was at training camp. I saw Trey Lance throw a pick today. Trey Lance didn't have the best day. And I'm going to be honest, he didn't have the best day. Now, am I going to overreact and say Trey Lance is this and Trey Lance is that? No, but this definitely wasn't his best day. And a lot of people have been talking about it, and even Grant posted on Twitter, this was kind of his Jimmy day. He had a Jimmy Garoppolo day in practice or in training camp. So, are you overreacting to this, or are you just okay with Trey Lance having a bad day in a training camp in one day of training camp, or are you like, oh, Trey Lance is this or Trey Lance isn't ready? So any thoughts or any reaction?
No, I mean, we gotta be patient. It's the second practice of training camp, and what I heard was that the offensive line was really letting him down, right? It's hard to be accurate throwing the ball when there's a bunch of bodies around you. The offensive line isn't holding up. So everything I heard, the offensive line, they were running with a bunch of backups, right? There's no, Trent Williams isn't out there. There's a few guys that weren't practicing today. So it was the second string that was working as the first team, and then like the third
Mm-hmm.
string was working as the second team. So I'm not going to overreact because I know we're going to talk about this defense, but this defense made it tough on Lance today.
He did. They sure did. That defensive unit was locked down today, and we're definitely going to discuss the corners and that defense in general later in this stream. But that defense was making it really tough on Lance today, and not even just Trey Lance. All the quarterbacks in general. Sudfield was struggling a little bit. He also threw a pick, and even Purdy threw 2 interceptions. So the
Ooh.
whole offense in general was struggling today.
Hey, what's up, big play, Slay? And
What's up?
you
What's
know,
up?
I think we're going to see a steady improvement from Trey Lance. Let's see. Monday, pads will be on, and that'll give you a more realistic look at, more football, what football looks like on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, there's no reason to overreact. It's one day of training camp. I mean, all quarterbacks have bad days. And I mean, if you remember, I know might be a bad comparison, but if you remember Patrick Mahomes' first training camp when he was a starting quarterback, even Patrick Mahomes struggled a little bit. Through his first 7 practices, he threw 6 interceptions, and the reports were coming out that he was struggling a little bit. But then what happened? Patrick Mahomes had an MVP caliber season and he dominated. Now, I'm not gonna sit up here and say Trey Lance is gonna exactly have that same season, but it's only one day of training camp. The defense played really, really well. And the offense in general wasn't at its best today. It just wasn't. And I mean, you just got to expect Trey Lance to have his ups and downs, to struggle a little bit. But I think once Trey Lance gets a certain amount of reps and he gets in rhythm, I think Trey Lance will be ready to go.
I mean, I want to ask you, since you were there, and first off, I think that was super cool that you were there checking out that practice today. And I want to ask you, how many passes from Lance would you deem like inaccurate, where you were like, oh, that pass was off the mark? I mean, there's
There
what?
really wasn't that many passes. I would say maybe 2 or 3, but I
Okay.
really never. There wasn't that many passes. There was a lot of passes where one of them to the pick that he had with Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward was sitting on it and waiting on it, and he not forced it, but he threw it into the middle, and Jimmy Ward just picked it.
Yeah, it
Right? I don't
sounded
know if
like Lance just didn't see
yeah,
him.
Lance either just didn't see him or he might have forced it, but I don't really think he forced it. I just think Lance didn't see him. But that was one pick, but I don't. Jimmy Ward was sitting on it; he was waiting for it. But outside of that, Lance, for the most part, some of the incompletions that he had, they were accurate passes. There was one pass I forgot who he threw it to, but it was like a deep pass. I think it was to Jawan Jennings, and then Charvarius Ward broke up the pass, but it was an accurate
Mm.
pass. He gave Jawan Jennings an opportunity to go up and get it, and then
Uh-huh.
right at the last second, I thought he caught it, and then right at the last second, Charvarius Ward knocked it out, and it was an incompletion. But for the most part, Trey Lance has been pretty accurate, and even watching him not even on 11s on the sideline when he was working by himself. He was working out with all the quarterbacks. He was working out with George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk, and he was hitting them, running that play
Oh,
action thing that they do. And for the most
yeah.
part, he was accurate. He was hitting majority of them. So, I mean, Trey Lance, he obviously is going to have his bad practice days, but I think, like I said, the more reps that he gets and the more he gets used to being in the system and the more reps that he gets, I think he's going to get better, and I think he's going to get used to, being the 49ers quarterback and getting used to being in the system.
No doubt. And I really like Lance. He's got all the tools to be a dynamic quarterback. The
Yeah.
one thing that I'm just not sure about Amin is the accuracy. I'm not saying he's inaccurate, but I can't call him pinpoint precision. I just haven't seen enough of it yet. So I like the feedback you're giving me in terms of, man,
And
you were there
Trey
today.
was using his legs, man. There were certain plays where the defense let him down. Now there was times where he probably would have taken sacks in real games, but there was one play. I think the first play, he rolled out to his left, juked out a defensive end, and then took it almost like 20, 30 yards. And then he ran out of bounds. But, like, that's what Trey Lance can add to the 49ers next season is that when the play breaks down, he can use his legs and escape and get, 10 yards or first down. And he did that today in practice. I don't remember if he did
That's
that
so
more, but he
huge,
did that
Amin.
today.
That's so huge, Amin. Because if let's say if a defensive end, let's say it's a blown protection by the offensive line, and there's a defensive end or linebacker coming in free, if that's Jimmy Garoppolo, it's an automatic sack, right?
Yep.
Like Jimmy's not getting out of it. Trey's got some wiggle and some strength that he could make a guy miss. And now, instead of a sack and a loss of down, he's breaking the pocket for potentially a big play. And that's going to be exciting. I think this offense, I think it's going to take a forward step. I mean, anytime you're playing, you're going from a veteran quarterback, right, to an inexperienced one, there's some question marks. But I'm thinking this offense is it's gonna take a step up.
I think it's gonna take a step up. Now I don't know when that necessarily is gonna happen, but here's the dynamic that Trey Lance adds to the offense is that he can use his legs also. Where when you're in that handoff game with Jimmy Garoppolo, you already know it's going to Elijah Mitchell or it's going to Jeff Wilson or it's going to the running back. You're not necessarily going to use Jimmy Garoppolo. The only exception that you could say when Jimmy Garoppolo necessarily used his legs this season, were on those two QB runs in Chicago where he scored those 2 touchdowns and then everybody started calling him Jimmy Wheels, Jimmy Wheels. But I mean, with Trey Lance, Trey Lance can use his legs, and that's one extra dynamic that he adds to this offense. So in that run game, sometimes you can give it to the running back. Sometimes you can have Trey Lance run with it, right? So you have that extra dynamic with Trey Lance, and then also that deep passing game. I think we're not gonna get all. I don't think with Trey Lance in that offense, I don't think we're gonna get like Trey Lance is gonna throw 30 or 40 times in a game. No, but I think we are gonna see at least one or two deep shots in some of those in some of the games this upcoming season because Trey Lance has the arm and the capability of doing that and hitting a deep receiver and hitting
and
the
and
receiver
not
deep.
absolutely, and not only that, the way defenses I feel like have started to play us more recently, the past couple years, they're loading the box, right? Is that due to the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is unwilling to take shots down the field, or is it we run the ball? Our rushing percentage is in the
Yeah.
top 5
The
in the
reason
NFL every
yeah, the
season.
reason why I think teams load the box on the 49ers is because they know that the Niners' number one strength is their run game. And then if you look at just the record last year of when the 49ers needed Jimmy Garoppolo, the Niners made Jimmy Garoppolo throw the ball 35 or 40 times in a game. Majority of the games that outcome would be the Niners would end up losing. But the game where the Niners would have Elijah Mitchell have 25 carries or have a running back or use their running backs a lot and have a lot of rushing, have a lot of use a lot in that, have a lot of use their run game a lot and run the football and pound the football down your throat, and Jimmy Garoppolo only throw it 20 to 25 times maximum, those games the Niners would majority of the time end up winning. So the team with the other teams or the other defenses would stack the box in the 49ers because they know you take away that run game and you have to make Jimmy Garoppolo throw the football, you're most likely going to end up winning that game, and it'll be really hard for the 49ers offense to be productive if the Niners can't run the football.
And if you do that to Trey Lance, that's
Yep.
what you're talking about. That's where we're going to see some
Trey
deep
Lance can
shots
run
to
and
try
use
to
his legs.
exploit
Yep.
that. Because that's how football works. Me and you had some Madden battles, and there's always a counter to everything the defense does or the offense. So if the offense wants to run, defenses load the box. That's when you're taking shots.
Yep. And I mean, it was not only Trey Lance. Like, I don't want to go into too much detail about Purdy and Sudfeld, but even Brock Purdy and Sudfeld struggled today. Purdy threw 2 picks. Sudfeld also threw a pick. So, just in general, like I said, the offense just struggled today. It wasn't.
What did Sudfeld's pick look like? Do you remember?
Sudfeld's pick. I actually do not remember. I think it was like a tip pass. I think it was tipped and then someone caught it. I don't remember exactly, but I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Someone and then and it was cool because we were right next to like both the offense was on one sideline and then the defense was on one sideline, 11 on 11s, and there was actually like Javon Kinlaw was standing there. They're playing music really loud, and Javon Kinlaw was like standing there and like dancing a little bit, and he's getting into it a little bit. He's dancing a little bit. He's feeling it. Javon Kinlaw didn't participate on 11 on 11s, and the funny thing is even Bosa was there. Bosa was sitting down with Javon Kinlaw a little bit, but it was cool to see, you know, the offensive linemen and the defense and the offense and defense in general. And those guys are way bigger when you see them up close. Like, you know they're big, right? But when you see them up close, you're like, damn, right? Like, I saw Javon Kinlaw, I'm like, damn, that guy is huge. Like, that guy he's built different, man. It's way different when you see it up close. Like, it's just way different. Even Bosa, like Bosa, I saw Bosa today. Bosa came over and gave this little kid a towel, or like gave this little kid a towel. But like even Bosa in person, that man is ginormous. His thighs and his quads also just huge.
I know. It makes me want to go get in the weight room. I mean, damn.
Yeah, those guys are just another level. But speaking of the defense, let's talk about Charvarius Ward a little bit. Charvarius Ward has been the star of training camp so far. Now, it's only been 2 days, but there has been a lot of buzz around this guy. And today he had 2 pass breakups. Like I said, he had that one on Jennings and that deep pass. And then he had another pass breakup, which I don't exactly remember off the top of my head. But Charvarius Ward so far has been looking really, really good. And specifically in man coverage, he's just been looking really exceptional. So Charvarius Ward, and not even Charvarius Ward, even Emmanuel Moseley has been looking good. Emmanuel Moseley had 2 pass breakups. But just in general, Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley have been looking good. But I want to talk about something that Richard Sherman said. Richard Sherman had a tweet about not only those 2 guys, but he had this tweet about just the 49ers secondary in general. He said, before the season is over, there will be a lot of chatter about this 49ers secondary being amongst the best in football. Mark it down. Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Moseley are a problem. Jimmy Ward has been playing at a Pro Bowl level for years, and look for Talanoa Hufanga to shine.
Wow, that's
high
exciting.
Praise.
That is high exciting
praise,
to hear.
and that's exciting, like you said, and that's exciting. Right?
And,
you get a guy like Richard Sherman saying that.
If that happens, and let's say, you know, our secondary is a top 5 in the league, that means our defense is going to be number 1. We got the best linebacker core in the league already. And this defensive line is so deep.
I've said that before, right? Not even the defensive line depth in general. You have Kerry Hyder, Robert Nkemdiche, right? Javon Kinlaw, Nick Bosa, Armstead, Jordan Willis, Kamoko Turay.
Yeah.
Drake Jackson. You have so much depth on that D line. So if someone happens to go down, you have a guy, not necessarily to replace him, but you have a guy to come in and fill in, and still sort of, you know, have somewhat of an impact. You look at the linebacker core. There's teams that have good linebackers, right? If you look at the Buccaneers, they have Levante David, they have Devin White. Teams have good linebackers, but teams don't have 3 good linebackers, and the Niners have 3 good linebackers. They have Fred Warner, who's the best linebacker in the league. You have Aziz, who played in certain
I
parts of
love
the in
Aziz.
certain parts of last season. I love Aziz also. In certain parts of last season, he looked better than Fred Warner, especially nearing the end of the season. He looked better than Fred Warner at times in the season last year.
At times,
And then
yeah.
you also have Greenlaw. Greenlaw got injured last year, but even Greenlaw's a baller. So like, I mean, you have
That
3
dude,
guys
he
who
makes
are
plays,
who
man.
are
Greenlaw
dominant,
makes some
who are
plays.
really, really good. You have 3 linebackers who are really, really good. And I said this yesterday when I was on with Crypto Ryan, is that cornerback room, usually that cornerback room, and even last year, coming into last year, I said that cornerback room was a position group that was the most concerning for the 49ers. And even Grant and a lot of people were saying, if Jason Verrett goes down, what's going to happen? And then Jason Verrett goes down week 1, and there was a lot of issues in the games. We started Josh Norman, and the cornerback room in general, and just the corners. The corner play was better than a lot of us expected it to be, but it wasn't phenomenal or wasn't great either. Where this year, going into this year, next season, you added Charvarius Ward, obviously, which was your big free agency move. But Charvarius Ward has been looking really good. But just in general, I think this cornerback room has been the best in the Shanahan and Lynch era, and I stated this yesterday. So just looking at all of that, you got to be really excited for that defense. And if everybody can stay healthy on the defense, this defense will be top 5 in the league easily.
I mean, I think it has a legitimate chance at being the number 1 defense.
And then
Just
even D'Amico, because D'Amico had a great first year. There were certain
this
times
is
last year.
probably D'Amico's last year on the Niners.
I mean, I can't even argue with that, because the
If
Niners, Saleh went, McDaniels went this year, and then even D'Amico was getting jobs last year. And then if D'Amico leaves, also, I think D'Amico probably might leave at the end of the year, because even D'Amico, he struggled last year in the beginning of the season in certain parts in certain game situations, but then by the time he got to the end of the season, D'Amico had a better first year than Robert Saleh did, and he picked it up way faster than all of us expected. A lot of us, okay, D'Amico's a first-time coordinator. What's gonna happen? But D'Amico did way better than a lot of us expected. He exceeded expectations by a mile. He exceeded expectations like by a mile, like I said. So just looking at all those factors, I think the Niners could have easily a top 5 defense next season.
I'm pumped up about it, and I mean, let me just tell you schematically with Charvarius Ward. I read on Twitter all day from people who I respect, like Jason Aponte and Jordan, the Splash cousin, and they were all raving about Charvarius Ward. So if we're adding a lockdown corner like that, I'm expecting to play more man. Last year, we were mixing it up, playing zone and man, a lot of cover 3, but I'm thinking it's going to be more cover 1, right? I mean, which means we got one safety in center field, and then you got another safety who's in the robber position looking to jump a route. It kind of sounded like Jimmy Ward might have been the robber on his interception versus Trey Lance. So I'm expecting more cover 1. Let Charvarius Ward get in these receivers' faces, get his hands on them, some good old-fashioned press man, and then you get after it with this pass rush. It's going to be exciting. I think our defense has top 3 or top 1 potential.
Yeah, our defense has a lot of potential this upcoming season. And then even one guy who did do pretty well and had probably the catch of the day was Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was running a hitch route, and he got hit by Odom, and he caught it, and he got hit with no pads on, right? He got hit. Obviously, it was a little bit too much contact, or a lot of contact for a no pad practice, but he caught it, and he made an amazing catch. And all of us were like, wow. All of us started clapping, but he made a phenomenal catch down in the middle of the field. And Ayuk had a couple of good catches today. So did George Kittle. And guys are getting into it. I saw Debo today. Guys are getting, Ayuk and George Kittle. Obviously, George Kittle's got caught some passes today, but I saw Debo today. Debo is wearing a lot of red, had his little vest on, and Debo was just running through the middle of the field while the offense is working over there, the defense is working on this side of the field, and then Debo is just running sprints through the middle. Debo's just running sprints through the middle. He walks back and he'll go again. He walked back and he kept going again. So Debo's at training camp but he just isn't participating like in the team drills. He isn't participating with the receivers. He isn't participating in the team drills, but he is there. And then when they were doing 11 on 11s, I told Baller off camera, Debo was working on his cuts. He had like set up cones. He was working on his cuts. And he was going this way and left, right, left, right. So he kept doing that. And then I think he went to the weight room. And then we didn't see him after that. But Debo's there. Debo's still working. He just isn't participating in the team drills, or he isn't participating in the team activities.
And how long can you have him do that for? I mean,
Yeah.
like when at some point he's got to start practicing. I know he wants to get paid and he should get paid. 49ers, they got to pay this man. This man was the MVP of the offense last season. So we need him on the field, but they got to start building chemistry, is what I'm getting at. I mean, Trey
Yep.
Lance and
Yep.
Debo,
Of
they
course.
got to start working together more, get some more reps, because every receiver runs their route with a little bit of a different nuance. So you got to build the timing. And so I'm just wondering, how long can they do this, before it's like, hey, all right, it's time to get him on the field. If we can't work it out, then because they got to build chemistry. I mean,
Yep, they got to, and I mean, he's already has not. He has already has somewhat of a chemistry with Ayuk. He has somewhat of a chemistry with George Kittle and even Kyle Juszczyk because he's working on those little play action, tossing it to throwing it to George Kittle and throwing it to Kyle Juszczyk. So he's building the chemistry with those guys. But then Debo was just running sprints right behind Trey Lance, right? Like he's running sideline to sideline. He ran through the middle of the field running sprints. So I mean, you gotta sign him sooner or later. And even DK Metcalf, which we'll get to a little bit later in the stream. But even Debo Samuel, I mean, they gotta even DK Metcalf got his contract. So sooner or later, they have to sign Debo Samuel. And the sooner you sign Debo Samuel, the sooner he gets on the field, and the sooner him and Trey Lance can build a connection with each other.
yeah, I'm right. I'm there with you.
Yep. And another guy who did pretty well on the defense was Maurice Hurst. Now, I don't know who you said was your Arden Key for this season. I forgot who it was. Who was your Arden Key for this season?
You know, uh, I've been going with Kevin Givens as like a
Yeah, you
super
said
deep
Kevin Gibbons.
sleeper.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think as an interior rusher, it's harder to get sacks, even though Arden Key was actually really good at it. So Kevin Givens. But I've also kind of thrown in as my next guy is Kamoko Toure.
Yeah.
I think Kamoko Toure is going to be that premier edge rusher opposite Bosa, where Bosa, the guys, gets double teamed more than anyone else. And he still finds a way to impact the play. And he's still going to, I'm expecting 15 to 20 sacks from Nick Bosa. Uh, but I think Kamoko Toure, this guy we got from the Colts, man, this dude's got some acceleration. He's got good hands.
Hmm.
And I think he's going to have a productive year. So probably from like a sack standpoint, I'd go Kamoko Toure. But Kevin Givens is also a guy I've just always liked. Kevin Givens' acceleration at the snap is unparalleled. When he's on the field, and the center snaps that ball to the quarterback, Kevin Givens is immediately jumping in. His acceleration is great. And if you don't mind, I want to touch on Mo Hurst too, because when we originally signed him and Arden Key coming from the Raiders at that point, Mo Hurst was flashing as a pass rusher. He was flashing on the tape. The sack numbers weren't there. He actually ended up having an injury that last season with the Raiders. It was an ankle or a calf, and that's what kept him out. Excuse me. Last year with the Niners. So that's the thing I'm monitoring with Hurst. How's the ankle? How's the calf? Because that's put him out the last couple years. But let me tell you, Mo Hurst, this guy can get after the quarterback from the
He sure
interior.
can. He
Yeah,
sure can. And Mo Hurst looked really good today. He had a couple of he had a couple of pressures, and then he also got a sack. Obviously, it's not an official sack, but he also got into the backfield and had a sack in training camp terms, and he got to the quarterback, and he actually beat Aaron Banks to get that quote unquote sack today. But he did a good job rushing the passer, and he got himself a sack. So he's looking pretty good. But in the guy that he did it on, which is Aaron Banks, who so far hasn't been necessarily looking the best.
that's a
And
second round pick. I mean, That's a second round pick.
Yep.
That's a premium NFL draft pick. So, man, I'm hoping they didn't whiff on this, man. 49ers, we've whiffed on too many offensive linemen Quame Harris, this guy we drafted from
Joshua
Stanford back in the
Garnett.
day. Josh Garnett, another Stanford. Stop drafting these Stanford offensive linemen. But Banks and McGlinchey are both Notre Dame. Anyway, we'll see. I was at that Chiefs preseason game last year, Amin,
I
where
was
Banks was on
also.
the
I
field.
was also.
And Banks was atrocious. Every
He
play
was.
I'm watching it live, and it looks like Banks is getting beat. But then you verify it when you look up at the jumbotron, and Banks was hardly touching these Chiefs defensive linemen. So I don't know. I'm a little concerned about Banks.
Yeah. I mean, Banks, and I was talking about this last year, but there were certain games where Banks would be inactive. Right? Forget
He
about
was inactive
not.
for like the first half of the
Yep,
year.
exactly. There were certain games where Banks would be inactive, right? So I'm like sitting up here thinking, I'm like, for your second round pick, if he's not playing, I get it. But for him to not
I
even,
don't.
for him,
I mean, second round pick. I mean, okay, maybe year one,
the
but by
reason
year
why I get
two,
it is because it's year one, but then on top of that, from preseason, and then he also got hurt in preseason, and then the training camp and all that stuff, he wasn't looking good. So I was like, all right, he's not looking the best. Fine, I get why he's not playing. But for him, okay, I gotta ban this bot in the chat. But for him to be
yeah.
inactive for a lot of these games last season, it's like, man, did you really get the right guy? And I was talking about this last year, but I really wanted Asante Samuel Jr. last year. I really, really wanted him in round 2, and he was right
Hey,
there. And the Niners, I think,
that
traded
he's a
back,
slot
or
guy. If I'm not
yep,
mistaken, he could have filled that slot role that is
yep.
now.
And Asante Samuel Jr. looked really, really good last year. And he's a starter for the Chargers next season. He looked really good, and I expect him only to get better throughout his NFL career. Whereas Banks, there's a lot of question marks, and still coming in a year 2. So far, I mean, it's still, you could say it's too early, but so far, it's not looking great.
Well, all we can do is hope for the best at this point, and we're gonna monitor the situation because a philosophy I live by is the tape don't lie. So we're gonna find out how Aaron Banks is playing here. As soon as hopefully this first preseason game.
Yep, and that's only 2 weeks away. I remember last year I went to a preseason game. And I mean, that Trey Lance throw, the Chiefs game that you went to,
Yeah,
and that Trey
the
Lance throw
Surefield.
was, yeah, Sherfield, and then that Trey Lance throw. That was like, I was losing my mind. And the funny thing was, my dad was in the seats and he was sitting next to me, and we were watching the game, and I got hungry, and I was like, all right, I want some food. And he left, and he was stuck in line. And then he came back after that, and he's like, what did I miss? And I'm like, you just missed probably the best part of today, which was Trey Lance throwing
Oh
at
man.
Sherfield. And we're all losing our minds. Like, I'm jumping up and down. The whole stadium's up on their feet. Like, it was getting loud,
And
right?
it's a
And that was the best part
preseason
of the,
game.
yeah, that was, and I mean, that's what made it worth it, right? Because let's say Trey Lance didn't do that, you'd be like, ah, dang it, no touchdown. But that pass was like, the whole stadium was going nuts.
And that's what Trey Lance is going to bring. Just the buzz around Lance it's outrageous. 49ers fans, 90% of them are ready for Lance and super excited. We won't talk about the other 10%. And I mean, I put up a video of Lance's, highlights from the Texans. The video hit 100K views, and that is not a number my videos typically reach. So that just tells you right there that Niners fans and the NFL in general, they want to see what this kid's got.
Yep. Yep. I don't know if you saw Justin Fields' video today. So there was a video of Justin Fields threw a really nice pass
Didn't
to Cole Kmet, and it was no offensive line. There was no offensive line, and Justin Fields was standing there. He got the ball. He threw it to Cole Kmet. It was a beautiful pass, but there was no offensive line. Nobody rushing Justin
Yeah, it
Fields.
sounds like no defense.
No defense. It was just like, okay, someone guarding the receivers and no like
Okay.
offensive line. So it was kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It was like no passer, just Justin Fields throwing against the defense, but with no pass rush
Yeah,
or no
yeah,
offensive line. I
yeah.
mean, it was a nice pass, but I don't know if he's gonna
I
get
think
that
it's
much
5 on
time this
5 is what they
season.
call it. Maybe 5 on 5 or something like that.
Maybe 5-on-5, but with no offensive line, so like
Mhm.
zero offensive linemen. But it was a nice pass, but he just it was a nice pass, but he just didn't. Oh my god, how do I get banned this bot? I don't know how many times I've already banned this bot. He keeps coming back in the chat.
Yeah, those guys are popular in the YouTube chats. They like to jump in there.
Yep, they definitely do. I've seen them everywhere, man. You see them on 95.7 The Game. You see them sometimes on Larry Kruger show. Like, I mean, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
But there was some breaking news that came out tonight with the 49ers rivals, which is the Seattle Seahawks, and DK Metcalf signed a 3-year, $72 million extension. So I'm going to ask you, how does this affect the Deebo Samuel deal?
To be honest, I mean that is right where I was expecting Debo's contract to be at with the annual value. What is that, like 24 mil a year? That, I mean, that's what I was expecting, like the Debo contract to be 24, 25 mil per. So, I mean, if you're the Niners, I feel like you offer him one more mil. You just up it. You beat it by a mil per. So give him 3 years, 75. That way, because the players, they're competitive in terms of how much money are you making. So Debo can have that over DK. Okay, you made more than DK, but let's get this thing done.
Yeah, I want this deal to get done because, like I said, and like you also said in before, is that you want to see Deebo Samuel and Trey Lance build that chemistry. And if Deebo Samuel is just going to be doing his own stuff throughout training camp, how are Trey Lance and Deebo going to build that chemistry? And from my knowledge and from what I know, is that Trey Lance was working out with Brandon Ayuk, Ray McLeod, and River Craycraft, who's on the Dolphins, but he was working out with Brandon Ayuk and Ray McLeod, not Deebo Samuel for the offseason, at least from my knowledge and from what I know.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really have necessarily, let's say, a good connection or chemistry with Deebo Samuel yet. So the
Mhm.
sooner you get this deal done, the sooner Trey Lance can throw passes to Deebo Samuel, the sooner they can build a chemistry throughout training camp and in the preseason games, and then obviously in the regular season. So that deal's got to get done. I mean, congrats to DK for getting his contract. Now, obviously, we hate to see him in Seattle for another 3 years, but I mean, his quarterback right now is Drew Lock, so not too necessarily worried about the Seahawks. But I mean,
I'm a
one
lean.
game.
I'm a push back and say I think it's gonna be Geno. I don't know how. I think they're having a good old fashioned camp battle over there. With Drew Lock and Geno. From what I've seen with Drew Lock in Denver, it was bad. I mean, I think Geno might be a tiny. Neither one of them is good, but I think Geno. I'd probably lean towards the vet.
I mean, who knows what's gonna happen in Seattle? I don't really follow the Seahawks.
Who cares?
Geno or Drew Lock. I mean, Seattle ain't really doing much this year. Probably gonna end up last in the division. Doesn't
Facts.
really matter. I mean, but one I really like, as much as I'm happy for DK for getting the contract, but I mean the one game that I always remember of DK Metcalf we're in Seattle, and there's one game where DK has like 100 yards in the first half and he's burning everybody. Russell Wilson, he's burning everybody. I don't know if you remember the game, but he's like destroying all the Niners corners.
Yeah.
And like the Niners had no answer for DK Metcalf.
He caught a deep one on Emmanuel
Yep,
Mosley
and
down the left
he was
sideline.
just dominating. Like it was him and Russell Wilson. It was him and the Russell Wilson show. That was
You're
the
right.
one
Okay, but
game
let
that
me give
always
you
comes to
one.
mind.
Let me give you one where the 49ers got Metcalf, right? And it was when Tart just ripped that ball from him at the goal line right before DK was about to score a touchdown, and Jaquaski Tart just ripped the ball out. That was one of my all-time favorite plays. I'm a Tart guy. I like Tart, and Hufanga. I think he does have some potential. Hufanga's got really good
Hufanga looked good today.
awareness.
One thing about Hufanga last year is that he has good instinct. he has really good instinct, and you saw him making tackles, and wherever the ball was, he was making the tackler, making the player. He was right there, right? So he has good instinct. The only issue with Hufanga that we still don't know is his coverage, because there's a lot of times that he got beat in coverage, or there was blown coverages, and Hufanga messed up on his assignment, or he wasn't where he was supposed to be. And one game that really like stood out to me about Hufanga was that Vikings game where Kirk Cousins threw it to Adam Thielen twice, and Hufanga wasn't where he was supposed to be two times. Now I think Hufanga is gonna shock a lot of people this season. He has been doing good so far in training camp, but obviously it is training camp. Like, you can't necessarily take too much away from training camp, but we'll see. I think Hufanga is definitely going to do better. I'm not really worried about safety because I believe in Hufanga. I think Hufanga is going to do relatively well next year. And he has a guy like Jimmy Ward next to him who definitely will be able to help him out. And Brian Culp says Eric with the mission residency hat. That is a
That's
fire
right.
hat. That is definitely a nice hat.
Hey, thank you. But I got to shout out the SF Niners, Brad Graham. I won it on a giveaway, typing in some numbers. I typed in 38 for Diamador Lenore, and that was the number. Boom. Sent me this hat. So shout out Brad. And shoot. What were we talking right before that? I mean, my bad.
DK.
Yeah.
Hey
Yeah, and
man,
Tyler Noah.
shout out to Brad
Noah.
Graham. Shout out to Brad
Tal-
Graham. I mean, the SF
yeah.
Niners channel in general is probably one of the best, if not the best, and one of the best, or if not the best Niners channel out there. And
No,
whatever
it's real.
interviews or any Kyle Shanahan interviews or the media talking about Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo or whatever, he's on it. He's on it right away. And if you want to get the latest updates on the Niners, stuff like that, go check out the SF Niners. I mean, Brad is amazing.
Yeah.
He even had a couple of interviews with Charles Menahue, Daniel Brunskill, Mike McGlinchey. So Brad is the man. If you haven't already checked out the SF Niners, go do that.
Yeah. And I wanted to touch on Hufanga. That's when I lost my thought, because I watched the three starts that Hufanga played while Tart was out. Okay, the first one was versus the Bears. He was locked down. I mean, he was lights out against the Bears. There's a one-on-one where he's guarding Cole Kmet, and Justin Fields tries to hit him. There's not an inch of separation. It was phenomenal coverage by Hufanga. He was blitzing, pressuring. He didn't get a sack, but he was pressuring Justin Fields. He was great. And then the very next week was against the Cardinals. Jimmy Ward was out that week. So now you got Tavon Wilson and Hufanga, and he was bad. He was bad. I mean, there's no way around it. He was missing tackles. He's taking bad angles. He's getting burned in coverage. And then the third game, I thought he was just solid. So it was like one great game, one bad game, one solid game from what I saw from Hufanga last year. But that's his rookie year, too. We got to keep that in perspective.
Yeah, it's
That's
his
his
rookie
rookie
year.
year.
Yep. And he was only like a fifth round pick or like a late pick. So I mean, and that's the thing, right? Me and Jesse went back and graded all the Niners draft picks until 2019 in the Shanahan and Lynch era. And one thing that the Niners sometimes miss on their
I was
first round
watching
draft
that.
picks, right? But in the late rounds, like the Niners get guys that bring really good value for where they're drafted, like where that draft spot is, whether it might be in the late sixth round, or whatever. The Niners get really good value with George Kittle, and then a lot of people forget. But like, if you were watching that stream, DJ Jones was also in the same draft class, and he was drafted after George Kittle in the sixth round. So like, I mean, DJ Jones is another guy who got a big off-season contract, but like, I mean, the Niners get really, really good value in the late rounds. And I wish they were able to hit on a lot of those first round picks. Like McGlinchey, I wouldn't say is necessarily, an A+ pick, but it's not bad. It's okay. But I mean, if the Niners could hit on their first and seconds, like imagine if the Niners were able to hit in 2017 or hit on their first and seconds. I mean, the Niners John Lynch would probably be one of the best GMs in football. I think he already is, but he would be up there. Like he would be up there in the top 5, top 7 conversation.
Yeah, I remember that year. The guy I really liked was Marshawn Lattimore. I liked Lattimore coming out of Ohio State. And, the 49ers took Solomon Thomas. We won't dwell on that. Who actually, I didn't hate the pick at the time, but it turned out it didn't work out very well.
Could have had Deshaun Watson or TJ Watt. Oh, that's still a tough one. Trey Lance is a bust. The former NFL scout tried to warn us in a very artistic way, and we didn't listen. Run it back with 10. Couch GM.
Shout out Josh, man. What's up, Josh?
Shout out Josh. I mean, I played MLB the Show with him one time, and we didn't finish the game. But I mean, he hit like I think 2 homers on me, and I was the Dodgers, and he was the Giants. And I mean, we didn't finish the game, but he hit 2 homers on me. So
That's tough. That's tough. Yeah, MLB. I had 1 year I played MLB. You know me, I'm a Madden guy. It's like the only video game I play.
I
So I
play 2K.
usually
I'm a huge 2K guy, so I play 2K more than I play Madden. I used to play. After getting beaten so many times, I kind of got bored of Madden. I was like, dang, I can't do this no more. All I do when I hop on Madden, like when I play kids online or people online in general, if I hop on an online game, I'm doing pretty well. But then whenever I go and play baller, it's like I'm ready to go. I just played 3 online games. I'm 3-0. I'm ready to go, and then baller just dominates on me, and I'm like, oh no,
man,
I'm
I
not
got I
ready
gotta
to
teach
go.
you a few things, man. I could teach you a few things.
Yeah, we talked about it before. I've talked about it on my show before, man. Like, you are like Kyle Shanahan in Madden. Like, you'll have a bunch of mismatches, and I'm like, okay, my defense is ready to go. And then somehow Deebo Samuel will be wide open, cutting right through the middle of the field. And then, Brandon Ayuk is getting guarded by a linebacker, and I'm like, what is going on right now? What is happening to my defense? What are all these
It's good
mismatches?
times. It was good times.
I wish I
And
could.
Josh, I'm a
I wish I could.
PlayStation guy,
He's a
Josh.
PlayStation guy.
PlayStation
Yep.
all day.
Yeah, but I think Josh is a Xbox if I'm not mistaken. But the last topic of the day was special teams. Two guys were on special teams duty. Not only Ray McLeod, but so is Elijah Mitchell. Both of those guys, Mitchell Janowski was kicking it, and both of those guys were fielding kicks and running a little bit, not too hard, but both of those guys were doing
Really?
that. Elijah
Elijah
Mitchell
Mitchell.
and Ray McLeod. So I think Ray McLeod will be on kick return, but could we possibly see Elijah Mitchell returning punts? Maybe. Both Elijah
Man,
Mitchell and Ray McLeod are out there
that
today.
is really interesting. I mean, that's really interesting because I don't teams don't usually put their starting running back on kick return.
Exactly, right. And
So
I was like,
what does
okay,
that mean? That makes
I
me think.
and
I'm sorry. I mean, this makes me think that maybe Ty Davis Price. There's more to Ty Davis Price. They're thinking Davis Price might have this big role, potentially be the feature back, and then Eli is working on kick returns and maybe I don't know. Actually, I wouldn't say that yet because Eli Mitchell was really good last year. I mean, this guy had the most touches in the NFL without a fumble
Elijah
or a
Mitchell was a
drop for that
beast.
matter. He didn't drop a pass.
hmm Elijah Mitchell was a beast for us last year, but I was shocked, right? Because I was like, okay, Ray McLeod's over there, and then I
Yeah.
see number 25, and I'm like, wait, that's Elijah Mitchell. What is he doing returning kicks?
Yeah.
But they were taking turns. Ray McLeod was taking one, and then it would be Elijah Mitchell, and then it would be Ray McLeod. So it was interesting. It was interesting to see. And then obviously after 11 on 11s, they brought up the field goal, and then Robbie Gould started kicking. He made the ones that he made. I think all of them. But
Yeah.
I mean, overall, it was a
But
good day of
I
training
got to
camp.
address Josh's comment. Well, to be fair, Debo was returning kicks last season, and he was the entire offense. Debo was the offense, but he started returning kicks at the very tail end of the year when they were fighting for the playoffs,
Debo was doing
or during
everything.
the playoffs.
Debo was doing
Debo
it.
was
Debo was running, obviously, playing receiver. He played quarterback in week 17. He was returning kicks. Like Debo was doing everything. Right? Like Debo was straight up doing everything. Right? And it's like people always bring up like there was I heard like someone was saying like, oh, what if Debo was like a sports broadcaster or a commentator or something like that? Like, oh, he would have to like let's say Debo hypothetically was a YouTuber, right? And he was doing what we do. If I me and Debo were co-hosts and I made Debo set up the stream, I made Debo write the description, write the titles, make the thumbnails, invite me on, set up the time, invite all the guests, do everything basically. That's what the Niners asked Deebo Samuel to do last season. They made him pretty much do everything on offense, throw passes, play running back, have like some games he had like 9 carries, not a lot, but there was not a lot in every single game. But there were certain games where he would have like
yeah.
nine
Towards the end of
carries.
the year,
Towards
they were he was the running back.
yeah, he was basically the running back. So Deebo was doing a lot. Mike asks a very interesting question. Do you think Deebo will return any kicks this year?
I'm of the mindset when the playoffs come, if you're in the playoffs, that's where you can do something like that. You don't
I agree.
use
I agree.
a pivotal piece on kick return duty because there's full speed collisions. So you don't want that for a full 17 regular season games.
Hmm.
But during the playoffs, at that point, mix them in when you want an explosive. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and I don't know if Mike and Josh were here earlier, but I talked about it how Debo was just running through the middle of the running sprints throughout the middle of the field while the offense and defense were working out, and then he was working on his cuts. I said this to Baller already, but Debo was just doing his own thing. He was there, but he was just doing his own thing. He was still, doing something at least, but he was just doing his own thing. But I mean, I agree with you. I think maybe you could use that in the playoffs and have Debo return kicks. I don't think it's likely or highly likely that they do that because Debo is already unhappy with necessarily the way he's used, or at least that's what we think. And he's obviously unhappy that he doesn't get his contract, hasn't gotten his contract yet. But I think right now, from what I saw today, I think it's gonna be Barry McLeod for majority of the season, and then maybe Elijah Mitchell. I saw him today doing it, so I don't know if that's 100% thing or he just did it for today or throughout training camp they might do it. But I don't know. I'm not 100% sure if that's a full time thing. Bryant says, I don't understand why you wouldn't have Debo play out of his rookie contract and then franchise tag him.
Brian, I've made this point too, and really, you could franchise tag him twice. So technically, he could be under team control for 3 years, even if he doesn't want to play here. If he wants to try to sit out and pull a Le'Veon Bell, guess what? That didn't work for Le'Veon Bell. I know it's a different position, but losing out on game checks, because when you're franchise tagged, you're getting paid a premium. I think
Mm-hmm.
they average out like the top 5 salaries at the position. So you're getting paid a top 5 salary, but players hate it because it doesn't have the longevity. So Debo would be pissed. You franchise tag him. Players hate being franchise tagged because they want that long term security. So that would cause a rift, but it's an option. If
It's an
Debo's
option. It's definitely an option, but that's the thing. I don't know if Debo would necessarily be happy with that. Right? And Debo's already not the most happy right now. Jack says, or Josh, sorry. I always get confused because of his name. It's always JCK. So I'm like, Jack
Me
said,
too.
but
Me
it's
too.
Josh. And then I'm
But
like,
I'm on Twitter
Josh.
with him and it's
Yeah.
Josh. What's
Yeah.
up, Josh?
What's up, man? I don't know if it's smart to have Debo returning in the playoff, returning kicks in the playoffs if he hasn't been doing it prior. Neither guy who has been doing it at least for a few weeks before throwing him in a huge moment. I think it's gonna be Ray McLeod. Like I said, I don't think it's highly likely that they use him in the playoffs. If they do decide to have Debo return kicks, which I don't think is gonna happen, I think the only logical move would be to make him do that in the playoffs. But I think it's gonna be Ray McLeod. I think that's why they brought him in, and I think he might. I don't know about this 100%, but he might do what Debo does, which will be used in the backfield and kind of be used in the same role that Debo was. Now, I don't think he's going to be as effective, but I think you might see that because I don't think Debo Samuel wants to be used in the backfield 9 or 10 times next
We're
season.
talking about my boy Ray Ray, right?
Yep.
We're talking Ray Ray. I love Ray Ray, and I definitely want to use him in the backfield. I've actually been advocating that I think he could take the pass catching running back role from Jermichael Hasty. I've watched I watched a lot of Ray Ray McLeod after we signed him, and I went back to his high school highlights. Most of them are at the running back position,
Dang, you
and I
going way
know
back to high school.
I know it's high school, but this dude was a dynamic running back in high school. That's why he was a top recruit who went to Clemson. Clemson used him more as a receiver, but he was also getting some carries. So even Clemson was giving him the ball back there. So I think Ray Ray's a guy who could get some snaps at running back in some capacity, or like you said, on the old fashioned Debo jet sweeps.
Debo
I
Jet
really
Sweep.
like Ray
Yep.
McLeod, and the fact that him and Jawan Jennings are just they have two completely different skill sets at the slot receiver position. I love
Hmm.
the contrast.
And I forgot to mention, shout out to Danny Gray. Danny Gray burned through the whole defense for a 45-yard pass completion. Danny Gray is fast. He is fast, fast. Danny
I
Gray,
mean, I called that pick. I came in
look
front.
out,
I called that pick. I was
look
saying the
out.
Niners need to draft this guy. I was watching him at SMU, right? First I was watching SMU tape because the other receiver had a lot of buzz too, Reggie Roberson, a speedster. But when I'm watching, Danny Gray was the guy jumping off the screen. And ever since
Danny
then,
Gray, Danny Gray's fast, and I think like how certain teams have their deep threat and have a fast, speedy guy. Like the Chiefs had Tyreek, right, and like how certain teams have their deep threat and speedy guys. I think that could be the Niners. For the Niners, that could be Danny Gray because Danny Gray, and it was an underthrown ball, and Danny Gray still caught it. And he burned through the whole defense.
he's a
Danny Gray's
blazer.
fast.
He's a blazer. You know, he was pulling away in college,
Yep.
the college tape. He's running away from everybody.
Jack says, "Do I need a new username?" I don't know, man. That's up to you.
I mean, I got it down now.
I got it also, but like I mean, for people that
down
don't,
now. It took me a while. It took me
Yeah.
the Twitter verification, interacting with you a few times. Like, okay, it's Josh.
But for the people that don't necessarily like know you, like I mean, they would think your name would just be Jack because of the name. But I mean, if you do know Josh, then you know that his name is Josh, not Jack. I wanted to pull up one comment that Josh said about Debo about the franchise tags. I want to get your thoughts on this real quick. If they do franchise tag Debo and let him play out his rookie contract, and they do franchise tag him, Josh is saying because the longer you wait, the higher the market price goes typically. And I've been saying that all offseason is that the longer that the 49ers wait for the Debo contract. And the difference between the George Kittle contract and the Debo Samuel contract is with the George Kittle contract, the only two tight ends in the market that were getting big contracts were Kelsey and then George Kittle. Those are the only two guys that are expected to get paid. This offseason, on the other hand, we had Devontae who got paid. We had Tyreek Hill who got paid. A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, a bunch of guys. And Christian Kirk, who obviously became a high paid, who got paid a lot of dollars by the Jacksonville Jaguars. But then now we're just waiting on Debo. So, like, I get what Josh is saying here also, because the longer that the Niners do wait, the higher the price goes up, the more guaranteed money that you're gonna have to give Debo Samuel.
No,
And
I can't argue
I'm not
against
opposed. I'm not opposed to giving Debo the franchise tag, but he makes the point that dude, the longer that you do wait, the higher the price goes up, and then eventually you're gonna have to pay Debo if you want to keep him on this team. And the Niners are
as the
already
salary cap goes up,
Yeah.
which we know the salary cap goes up every year, but it's set to explode with this new TV deal. I want to say in 2024, maybe 2023. But as the cap goes up, so does the player's salary. So
Yeah.
I mean, I agree.
Yep. Josh says new username will be BayAreaBaller18.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That was a good one. That was a good one. I mean, but that's basically the end of the show. I mean, if you have anything else to say, I think we should be about time. We should be about done for today.
Yeah, let me see. I got the depth chart pulled up here. I'm just looking to see if there's anybody I wanted to touch on while I got Amin the Dream. But I got to thank you for having me on.
No, I gotta thank you because obviously I won trivia. If you play trivia on BayAreaBaller's channel, which we will plug in a second. But I mean, you said, you know what, instead of me getting
You wouldn't take my money.
prize,
I
I didn't
mean,
want the
you
prize.
wouldn't take my money.
I told you. I
said,
told
hey,
you
you
before.
won. There was a
I told you
cash
before.
prize
Yeah,
of
I know.
$14, and I said, Amin, so what's the Venmo, PayPal? I don't care if it's your mom or your dad's. And it means like, no, I'm not taking your money. And I was like, okay, I mean, you know what? You give me anytime you want to do a show, I'm on. And this ain't going to be the last one. I know we're going to do more shows, and I
Yeah,
always get pumped up to whether I'm whooping your butt in Madden or talking ball with you. I love both of them.
I like
And,
talking ball more than getting kicked in football. But especially in Madden. But I mean, it was great. Obviously, trivia was fun last week. Maybe I can keep my title, but I mean, you had some good questions there. You definitely had some good questions.
Thank
If
you.
you haven't already subscribed to BayAreaBaller18's channel, go do so in the description. He reached 1,000 subscribers, so congratulations on that. I don't know if I said congratulations to you already, but congratulations on reaching 1,000 subscribers. It's a huge milestone, so congratulations. If you haven't already, go subscribe to BayAreaBaller18's channel. if you want to do some Niners trivia, go and check him out. He does Niners trivia. I don't know if he's gonna do it this week,
It's
but he did it last
yeah,
week.
yeah.
But go check him out. He does Niners trivia. So if you wanna be included in those Niners trivia games, go check him out. Go subscribe to his channel. Go follow him on Twitter also. If you haven't already, that link is also in the description. And outside of even the trivia, I would sit down with Baller last season times when we were about to do shows. And Baller would have like pages of notes of each play, and he would write it down. He would have pages
I
of
did.
notes.
That
So
was a little insane.
if you want great
I
notes,
was
and if
writing
you
down
want,
every play. I mean, every
yep,
play of
yep,
every
yep.
game.
I
was
remember.
writing
I
in a book,
remember.
and my thoughts on it. Who got beat?
Yep,
Oh, McGlinchey got beat.
yep. And if you want
Tom
an
Compton.
yep, if you want an in-depth, in detail game breakdown after every single game, or after every single game or post game, go check out
Yeah,
Baller's channel
that's
also.
what I'm trying to do.
Because the season is coming up. Obviously, preseason is 2 weeks away, like I said. But yeah, if you haven't already, go check out Baller's socials. The links are in the description. And I've already told you before about the trivia. I just did it for fun. I like to test my knowledge on things, so I just did it for fun.
Hey, you nailed it. And what impressed me the most was there was some like old school questions, from 70s and 80s Niners teams that you were hitting on. So I was impressed. And there wasn't only 2 or 3 people. There was like 7 or 8 people on that trivia game. So yeah, if you want to do that, you want some more Niners content. We're so blessed. We got so many good creators.
We got a
And
lot, man. We
Amin,
got a
you keep
Ponte.
killing it.
We have Grant. We have Jesse, Rob Shoe, Jack Hammer. We have a lot
We'll
of
be
great
naming
49ers.
names all night.
Yeah, we got a lot. Mike says, who did the 49ers play last game of the season? The last year they won the Super Bowl. Easy question. The Rams, right? Yeah.
Pelton, yeah, this one's a stumper. That was a tricky.
You
This was a
talked
tough
about it.
one.
You did a call-in show, okay? And I was kind of like, I wanted to
Last year they
call
won the
in.
Super Bowl, so that's '94. I mean, I was 4 years old. I was still a youngster. That's why I'm hungry for a Super Bowl. I mean, like I was 4 years old the last time the Niners won it. So I'm tired of these
I mean,
crushing, heartbreaking losses that we've experienced versus
ever
the Ravens,
since I've been
2012,
alive.
the Chiefs,
Yeah.
last year against the Rams and the NFC
Yep.
Championship. It's just my heart just gets ripped out. So I'm ready for the quest for 6 to be fulfilled. Let's fulfill this sucker.
Yep. Ever since I've been alive and ever since I've been in existence, the Niners have made it to 2 Super Bowls and lost both. And if I don't know if you guys already know this, but I'm not a Warriors fan. So while Baller has been at least had one of his teams win a championship,
and the Giants too.
yeah,
Man, Giants had a nice run.
At least the Lakers won in 2020, right? Bubble year. So I can't be like.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But I mean, so far, it's been tragic being a Lakers fan last year. It was hard. It was definitely tough being a Lakers fan last year, and then the
y'all ain't
Niners,
going nowhere as long as Russell Westbrook's on that team. I'll tell
the
you
way
that
that
right
the
now.
Niners season was last year. Yeah, that was a tough game, and you did a call-in show a couple of days ago, and I wanted to call in, and he started talking about it, and I'm like, that brought back so many bad like thoughts and memories. And that Rams game, the Niners honestly should have won that. They had so many drives where they were at like at the 45 and they had to get like 10 or 15 more yards to get into field goal range, and the Niners still couldn't do that. And then you brought it up also, that last 6-minute mark. What were the Niners doing?
Yeah, I mean, it was a terrible delay of game that Jimmy Garoppolo took.
Yeah.
Second down, like in that situation, you can't
Yes,
take a
sir.
delay
We
of
got
game.
Lakers fans in the chat. Laker, yes, sir.
Oh
yes, sir.
dear. Oh
yes,
dear.
Sir. Yes, sir. Laker Nation, stand up. Yes, sir.
Damn. Are you serious right now? Damn.
We got more. See, that's the thing. Either you're not Niners and Warriors fans. It's kind of like split because there's Niners and Warriors fans, and then there's also Niners and Lakers fans.
There is.
There's a lot of Niners and Lakers
I'm
fans.
seeing that. A little too much Laker blood and mixed in with the Niner blood.
That's actually a good point. I have to root for the Lakers. My birthday is 8/24, August 24th. Happy early birthday to you. And then his name is also Bryant. So
damn, that's crazy.
That's insane. What a coincidence, though.
I mean, yeah, I see that. I see the parallels there.
Yep. Well, that basically wraps up the show. Like I said, Go subscribe to Baller's channel. Go follow him on Twitter. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please go do so. Please go do so. It'd be greatly appreciated. Like this video. I appreciate you for joining me, BayAreaBaller18. I had a blast with you. And we'll see you guys next time. This is the first time I did 4 streams in a week, so I mean, feels good. Love doing the podcast, but love doing the shows with a variety of different guests. But I appreciate everybody in the chat. We had a good chat today. We got 16 people up in here. We have Niner Sickness Podcast. We have Brian, who's always tuning in. David, Carcast. What's up to you,
Yep.
Carcast?
What's up, Carcast?
What's up? We're doing good. Mike, we got a lot of people in here today, so I appreciate the chat and everybody for their support. And we'll see you guys next time. Like I said yesterday, football is back. Let's go. Peace.
Let's go.